My name's Veronica from Lawrenceville, Georgia. We need all the help we can get to get John Ossoff elected for Senate in Georgia. Also, Reverend Warnock. How can we go about getting all these voters in Georgia to realize that Ossoff and Warnock are not running against each other, and Ossoff needs to be a part of the Senate so we can make things happen? Let's get it, Georgia.
Hi, Lincoln Project. My question is, will every person that is on the current administration Operation Warp Speed team be remaining past January 20th? I ask this question because many of them, when interviewed by news agencies, will not even acknowledge that Joe Biden will be our next president. Thank you.
Tuesday, December 15th, just 36 days from the inauguration. And we love people who pack early. Today on Vote for America, we'll be talking with former RNC Chair Michael Steele. And now our host, Lincoln Project co-founder Jennifer Horn.
And welcome to Vote for America on LPTV. I'm so happy that you are with us today. We have an amazing show ready for you to go, full of great guests and useful, terrific information. Let's start by celebrating the fact that we are 36 days from the inauguration of President-elect Joseph R. Biden, a historic day in American history. Yesterday, of course, was the Electoral College vote. And Biden-Harris now have 200 and well in excess of 270 electoral college votes needed. We also want to make sure that you have a chance to participate in this show. In our second segment, we're going to be talking to a doctor who is an expert on infectious diseases and knows everything that you are going to want to know about these vaccines that are coming out for COVID-19. And you're going to have an opportunity to participate. If you'd like to bring your question live to the doctor, you can join our Zoom room. There is a Zoom ID there. Go up on the screen for you. Write that down, the Zoom meeting ID. It'll bring you right into the room. And that's if you have a question that you would like to ask live on the show. I love to see you and meet you whenever we have this opportunity. So I hope that you will join us and be part of it. Take a second to write down that Zoom ID right now. And in the second segment, you'll have a chance to talk to the doctor and make sure that all the questions that you have about this vaccine will be answered. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's been less than a year since the COVID-19 virus materialized in the United States. A vaccine has been developed and tested, and now it's been administered in our country as well. We know that the first vaccine was administered last week over across the seas, and yesterday the first vaccine administered here in the United States, and it's now being shipped out to all 50 states. There's an extraordinary amount of progress. It gives us hope. I'm looking forward to having the chance to talk to the doctor in just a few minutes. But before that, we have one of our favorite guests. I say that about so many people. We're so lucky to have the great folks who come on this show with us. They're all so terrific. Michael Steele, of course, is the former RNC chairman, as well as the former lieutenant governor of Maryland and the host of the Michael Steele podcast, and one of the best people out there to talk about when it comes to the future of the Republican Party. Michael, thank you so much for being with me today. How are you?
I am great, Jennifer. How's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. I keep looking to the side. I haven't quite perfected how to set up my notes and the camera at the same time here. I hope people don't think that I'm just not bright enough to figure it out. But
No.
so much going on out in the world. Every day you would have thought, Michael, like we all said, well, when the election's over, right, things will calm down. Once this is all done, then we can all relax. Of course, that has not been the case. It has been a crazy post-election several weeks at this point, and they have finally resolved. I want to start talking about this case from Texas. It might kind of feel like old news in the age of Trump because it's a couple of days old at this point. But there's something about it that really bothers me that I wanted to discuss with you. It was brought by this guy, Ken Paxton. He's the Attorney General in Texas. It's an elected position. He's Republican. And I did not know his background until we kind of got into all of this. He has been under indictment since 2015 for securities fraud charges. And several of his, I want to make sure I get this right, several of his assistants have accused him, and this is in quotes from a story, in a news story, bribery, abuse of office, and other crimes. I don't get it. And yet this guy has been reelected and just conducted what I have to say, honestly, of all the assaults on democracy that we have seen come out of this, this post-election Trump, campaign, the worst, 17 other states, 18 other states, joining him in this, trying to literally just overturn the votes of millions of Americans in key states for the purpose, of course, truly of stealing an election. from Donald Trump. And as I look at his background and realize who he is and what he brings to the table, it really concerns me about the Republican Party itself. Is this the party now? Are these the leaders that we're listening to as a Republican Party, and and follow apparently 17, 18 other states, just kind of like, with all due respect to dogs, like dumb dogs with their tongues hanging out, just following behind him?
Well, yeah, I think it is. The party has given up its original sort of Lincoln moorings, its Eisenhower moorings, its Teddy Roosevelt moorings. It certainly is Reagan moorings for hitching its future to the Donald Trump dinghy, and they want to take this little dinghy out into the wild seas of politics and um, tell the ocean what to do. And to some degree, they've been successful at that. When you look at how Washington has bent over backwards and capitulated to a lot of what Trump has put out there. So yeah, this is the party, and it is a challenge for a lot of us who are still engaged in this fight to reconcile with that. When you look at this particular instance in Texas, with the state of Texas Secretary of State filing the case, 17 other states joining him, but then 126 members of the United States Congress who swore to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, declaring that they are more loyal to Donald Trump than to that Constitution, declaring that the election that was hard fought, no doubt, and very difficult for a lot of Americans to deal with in the age of COVID-19, that election was we don't like the results, therefore we're going to overturn the outcome in 4 states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, or Georgia. And the fact that they signed on to that, to me, I think was probably the final death knell of the modern Republican Party, certainly the party of Reagan, certainly the party of yourself and myself when we served in leadership roles inside the party. So now the question becomes, Jennifer, how do they reconcile themselves to the future? And what do they have to say after, almost 2/3 of the House Republican caucus said, no, black voters, we don't like the way you voted, and so we're going to disenfranchise you where you're centrally located in these urban communities. I don't know how that conversation goes. I certainly won't be a part of it in trying to defend it, and will be, as I have been, loudly speaking against that kind of leadership, because it's not American, and it certainly isn't Republican.
Well, and let's take a look at which states joined this suit coming out of Texas. I know that we have a list of all those states'
Yep.
names here, and I think this is important because kind of some of what you just alluded to. It's not just Donald Trump, right? Like, people like you and I who have spent so much time trying to stay with the party, trying to defend the principles, the values. You talked about Reagan, and we can go back and discuss great Republican leaders all the way back to Abraham Lincoln. It's and so when we come to the table and we say there are these values, these principles that we think are worth fighting for, I kind of came at it with the assumption that when Trump was gone, there would be Republicans who wanted to come back to that fight with me.
Right.
And yet we these 18 or 19 states, I think in the end in total, Republican attorney generals putting their names on the suit that attacks democracy, undermines the cornerstone of democracy, our elections. And frankly, the very nature of this particular suit flies in the face of the idea of states' rights, our individualism and our constitutional rights as states, which has always been this thing that we fight about, that fight for Republicans. So how do you, for you served as an elected Republican, you were the lieutenant governor of the state of Maryland. How do you frame it in your head, or how do you, I was going to say come to peace with, but maybe there is no peace yet.
No.
It's not just Trump. It's not just Trump.
No, it's not just Trump, and that's a very important distinction to make, and a very important point for folks to understand that Trump, in many ways, is the manifestation of a generation now of just bull and bile that has grown up inside the GOP. Those of us who have served in leadership roles, certainly Jennifer, when you were state chairman, when I was state chairman, and as national chairman, trying to expand its reach because these ideas that we thought were so valuable to the country and so important to help shape policy mattered. And so we fought for that. We went out and spoke about that. So, but beneath all of those efforts still was this churning, this ugliness that goes back to the 1960s and to the 1950s. Whereas some inside the party did not like the direction it was taking on civil rights, did not like the direction it was taking on a number of issues, and resisted that kind of expansion. But we still maintained the fight. This now is the capitulation where Donald Trump was able to make the Faustian bargain taste and sound and feel okay. And so folks were like, oh, okay, we can do this. And you've seen this play out with the elected leadership where they have no spine. They have no grounding force that they can stand firm against what they see Trump doing. And instead, it is easier for them to avoid being chastised and criticized by literally a third of the Trump of the Republican base, who are all in on Trump, as opposed to recognizing that the remaining 2/3 of us are looking for that leadership. We've got your back. We'll stand with you. We'll fight with you, right? No, why are you worrying about? It's like you go to a party and like there are two people in the corner who's just making it a mess for everybody, and instead of the remaining eight people or 10 people or 20 people in the room who was ever at the party going to say, look, y'all got to leave. Everybody goes, oh, okay. We don't want to upset them. Well, no, get the hell out of my house. That's how that works.
Right.
But that's the fight that we find ourselves in.
And we have faced this as a party in the past,
Yep.
and we've always had leaders who would come up to the mic and say, "There's the door. Don't let it hit you on your way out." And
Right.
and it's not, so that's kind of goes right back to where I started this question. It's not just Trump. McConnell hasn't done that. McCarthy hasn't done that. Ronna Romney McDaniel hasn't done that. Nobody has taken that lead. So let's kind of go a little deeper on this, and we're going to start with. Yesterday, of course, was the Electoral College vote.
Right.
306 Electoral College votes cast for President-elect Joe Biden, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. I don't want to say it wrong on purpose. I just realized I hadn't said her name out loud for so long. It's Kamala
Right.
Harris. And so it's all over as as far as who's really any legitimate question or cause, like it's all over, it's done. And so President-elect Biden came out after that last night and made some really powerful remarks, but he addressed those Republicans that you and I are talking about directly. And we just have a piece of that to share with our viewers right now.
Even more stunning, 17 Republican attorneys general and 126 Republican members of the Congress actually signed on to a lawsuit filed by the state of Texas.
Well, that speaks back more to the lawsuit that we were talking about earlier, but I think it goes to the larger point of what we're making here. Like these 126 folks who have been elected to the United States House, saying, cheering this on, saying that we're with you. You talk about, why, our party leaders should be showing these folks the door, but there's 126 of them who are saying, let's keep it going. We're going to put our names on this too. So when we look at that, the idea that there are so many Republican leaders willing to go down that path, literally trying to dismantle democracy, if that suit had any success at all. And you talk about some of the things that you just talked about, Michael, the particular voters that they want, they want to disenfranchise here, the history. Have we just gone full circle and come back to the days where the Republican Party is going to be known as the party of racism? I feel like we, as a nation, we made so much progress over the past 3, 4 generations, and it's like we've come right back to this. Are we the party of chauvinism, the party of racism now? Is that it?
Well, it's part of the great irony is that remember it was the Republican parties. I mean, beyond the oh yeah, we freed the slaves. Okay, I got that. But beyond all of that, what the party wanted to establish early on out of the gate was the civil rights of those newly freed slaves. Right. It also wanted to affirm and solidify the civil rights of women in this country. It also wanted to create, access, the same access, make it available across the spectrum to small business owners around the country, and so that they could play the same way the big boys played. So you had all these various pieces that the party understood that went beyond just what was in the moment, but looking into the future and saying, we also need to consider these things. So what has happened is we've moved off of civil rights. We did after Goldwater gave his infamous speech in 1964. We moved away from that civil rights agenda when Nixon decided it was better to attract white segregationists in the South, since the Democrats held the South at that time and made it more difficult for Republicans to win national elections because how they were anchored in the South. The Democrats were anchored in the South. That was a better play than holding true and firm to the relationship with the Black community, particularly around issues of civil rights. The same was true on a number of other fronts with respect to women and their rights and the civil rights of countless Americans. So the parties decided those things are less important now than appealing to and appeasing Donald Trump, okay? But even more importantly, embracing a form of nationalism, a new dystopian, distorted patriotism that is not rooted in your rights or my rights, Jennifer, but are rooted in the rights of white men and their progeny, in this idea of an America that quite honestly never existed. And so that's what Trumpism boils down to in many respects. You and I don't have a future in that America. And to the extent that you have people out there speaking and saying things like you hear from McConnell and others, that, well, we'll get past this. And once Trump is gone, we can go back to the same old, go back to what we did before. No, we're done. I mean, that cat's gone. It's out of the bag. It's moving on. And the question now becomes is, how does this new party play in creating a narrative for the future of the country? And what role will we play in that? And I think that's going to be an enormously important challenge going forward. And it's a difficult one. And a lot of Americans are going to have to ask themselves, are the men and women who emerge inside of this and out from this, do they really deserve our vote? Do I really want to vote for someone who voted to put a child in a cage? Do I really want to vote for someone who believes that the Proud Boys are on equal footing with those who fought against racism and segregationism? So that's going to be the challenge for the country starting January 20th.
And do I want to vote for somebody who had the opportunity to speak up against those atrocities and chose not to? It trickles down. It comes down the ballot. So, right. So you talked about it. It's people of color and women, and we've seen some of this. I was shocked, frankly. I think it was day before yesterday. God, time just melds together in these weird days, isn't it? But the Wall Street Journal had a guest op-ed, a guest opinion piece in there from a guy named Epstein. I'm still stunned. I guess not so much that he wrote it, but that they published it in the yes. They did that. Talking about that Jill Biden should drop the doctor title that she worked very hard to earn from her name, and actually addressed her in the opening, salvo of this thing as kiddo, called her kiddo. I found it demeaning and sexist. But worse than that was when the Wall Street Journal came out yesterday with their piece from their editors trying to explain why it was all okay and why those of us who thought that addressing a woman that way was not all right, that we were, I guess essentially it was like the Wall Street Journal mansplaining all of this to us.
Yeah.
So should Dr. Jill Biden be referred to as Dr. Biden?
Dr. Jill Biden should be referred to as Dr. Jill Biden. She should be referred to as First Lady, because she is both of those things and can be both of those things at the same time. Wall Street Journal. Show respect for the woman and her accomplishments. And don't give us this bull that, well, she's not a real doctor because she has a PhD in education. If you understand the history of the doctorate, before medical doctors were called doctors, people who had PhDs were the doctors. They were the knowledgeable ones. They were the intellectual ones. They were the ones who were looked to and admired, and in many cases revered for their intellect and their experience. So cut the crap, Journal, and recognize that not only were you mansplaining today or yesterday, but you were also offensively speaking to women in this country who have done a sight more than you have as a publication, who've raised kids, run families, grown businesses, got us all to work and home safely, and they did it in high heels and backwards and sometimes on their head. So just shut the hell up about women and their titles and just say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, thank you, ma'am, whatever you say, ma'am. Because that's how this goes.
That's your mom coming through, Michael. I've heard you talk about your mother before. That is your mom coming through right now.
That is my mother.
And I so appreciate that. And I'll just make the point, they never wrote an op-ed telling Dr. Kissinger that he should drop the doctor from his name, by the way. So, Michael, as always, it's wonderful to have you here. I appreciate your insight and your humor and your generosity. I hope that you and your family have just a wonderful, wonderful holiday. And I look forward to having you back again sometime in the new year. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Jennifer. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa to you and your family.
I think it's the 8th day of Hanukkah today, isn't it? We haven't wished a happy Hanukkah to all of our friends in the audience who are celebrating Hanukkah as well.
Absolutely. And everyone, just appreciate the blessings of liberty and the blessings of this year. Despite the difficulties, we still get to embrace and hold each other this Christmas season. So do that. And for heaven's sakes, don't mention nor think about Donald Trump once.
Yeah, absolutely. The merriest Christmas of all is that we don't have to think about him anymore. Thank you so much, Michael. Have a wonderful day. It's wonderful to have you here.
Bye-bye.
And folks, stay with us. We're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. We're going to be talking to Dr. Sharkawy. I'm going to make sure I'm saying his name properly before I come back. He is an expert in infectious diseases. You're going to have a chance to ask your questions. We'll make sure that we get as many of them to him as possible. But for the moment, or stay with us. And in a moment, we'll be right back after this from the Lincoln Project.
Hey, Donald, you hear that sound? That's the sound of moving vans. They're coming to pack you up and move you and all of your grift and indecency out of the White House. That's the sound of the cleaning crews coming to scrub the stench of your corruption and the stains from your lies from the Oval Office. You hear that? That's the sound of the exterminators coming to fumigate all that COVID-19 infection in the air that you could have kept out of the West Wing with a face mask. You hear that? That is the sound of the wall you finally built. The security wall around the White House. That's being removed to make way for a new president. A real president. The next president of the United States. Joe Biden. Hey, Donald. Don't let the door smack you in the ass on the way out. Oh, but wait. What's that sound? It's the sound of the Southern District of New York. And they're coming for you.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
And welcome back to Vote for America on LPTV. I'm so glad you stayed with us. Our next guest is a gentleman who's going to be able to answer all those questions that have been building up for all of us as we've gone through these last several months of the pandemic, with that, knowing that the vaccine was being developed and kind of that light at the end of the tunnel. We're very happy to have Dr. Sharkawy with us. He is an infectious disease specialist from the University of Toronto. The day after the first vaccine was administered here in our country, it's so important that we have expert advice. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. We have a ton of questions that have been coming in from our listeners. So I want to make sure that we get to as many of them as possible while we have you here. Let's start with the fact that we know yesterday the first vaccine in the United States was administered, and the vaccine now doses are going out to all of the states. There's been some prioritizing about who's going to get it. But I think that just in the last week, as we've seen the vaccines roll out, people are starting to kind of genuinely feel optimistic about this. Like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Is that optimism well-founded?
Oh, absolutely. Let's put this in perspective. This is a virus we didn't know existed at this time last year. And to get to the point where we are right now, having seen millions of people across the world affected by this and having a lot of different countries struggle mightily in terms of trying to enact the public health measures that are needed to bring this pandemic under control, to have this really impressive tool in our tool shed should give us a lot of hope. It should give us some motivation. It should provide some really desperately needed inspiration that if we do a little bit on our own in terms of adhering to some of those public health recommendations, that seeing the end of this pandemic is actually a reality. It won't be easy and it won't happen overnight, but it's certainly within sight now that the vaccines are safe, they're effective, and they're going to be deployed, hopefully on a mass scale relatively soon.
Some hope for the new year. That is great to hear. So we're going to go to our first question from the audience. We have a tweet. I think that coming in for you from Dana. Is there a significant difference between the vaccines, and which is better for someone who's not in a high-risk category? I think that's a great question. I wouldn't have thought of it.
Very good question. So there's a lot of different classes of vaccines that are being studied and have been developed up to this point in time. But I want to focus on two main categories because those are sort of the front runners right now. When we talk about either vector-based vaccines, and that uses some sort of a virus that the body already recognizes. The AstraZeneca vaccine uses the adenovirus, which is a common cause of many cold-like conditions and syndromes. And there's a similar vector that's used for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Right now, those classes of vaccines don't seem to be in the last stage of development and certainly haven't given us the data that we want to see yet, but they still stand to be fairly effective in terms of the mechanism that's used. They may not elicit as strong of an immune response as the mRNA vaccines. And those, of course, have been very much in the news with the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine. And that's where we use this mRNA to turn on our own cellular machinery to start making something that looks like the viral spike protein itself, and it triggers a really robust immune response. We're seeing success rates of 95% in the antibody response of these vaccines. So these look really, really good. Right now, there might be a little bit of concern that if that immune response is actually a little too robust, it's potentially something that we need to be careful with in people who have autoimmune conditions, for example, that they may be more likely to react adversely. I don't think that is a huge concern, but out of an abundance of caution, we're probably going to be careful right now. But even if you look at the vector-based vaccines, the preliminary data from the AstraZeneca is somewhere between 70 and 90%. That is still fantastic when you compare it to, for example, the flu vaccine, which on a good year might have an efficacy rate of about 60%.
I love the comparison to the flu vaccine. That's something that people get, they understand. You know, it's a tangible, solid piece of information that they can use to understand what you're talking about. Our next question comes.
If enough people take the flu vaccine, even at 60% effectiveness, it has a tremendous impact throughout our community. It reduces the number of people hospitalized and who come down with secondary pneumonias and all other combinations. So imagine if enough people took something that was 95% effective, how big of a dent that would put into this pandemic. It would be phenomenal.
Right. So, and that's the hope, obviously, with all of this. So our next question comes from one of our live viewers. Martin from Utah is with us today. Martin, thanks for being with us on the show. What is your question?
Hello, Dr. Sharkawy. My question is there a critical mass of people that must receive the vaccine before we achieve some level of herd immunity?
Excellent question, Martin. And it's one that we don't know if we have the answer to quite at this point in time. But based on history and based on viruses that spread very quickly, I think we're looking at somewhere in the range of 70% of the population. And so you can imagine that that's not a small feat. You need a lot of people to buy in to the science of vaccines and to feel confident that they're going to be effective and safe. And it's also a key point to remind us that without that, we need to bridge the gap on our own. We can't rely on the vaccine by itself. We need to maintain our good public health advice in terms of hand washing, masking everywhere we can, limiting our contacts and distancing, so that when there are gaps in our population between people who are vaccinated and those who are not, we make sure that the virus is not circulating and spreading more harm.
We've got another live viewer ready to jump right in with us. We've got Habib from California. Thank you for being with us today. What is your question?
Hi, thank you very much. So my first question was regarding the autoimmune disorder. I think I got the kind of answer for that already. So the second question is that once you get the vaccine, after that, the person is still be the person can still be a carrier to spread around, or no longer be a carrier.
Yeah, another really important question. Thank you for asking that. Is it Hafiz or Hafiz?
Both are fine.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for that. That's a really good question. And the reason that it's important to ask that question is people will develop immunity at different rates. So a young, healthy person who doesn't have any major problems with their immune system might theoretically be able to develop a proper and robust antibody response once they've been vaccinated as early as 3 weeks, for example, maybe a little bit longer. But someone else who may be older, who may be a little bit more frail and has some issues with their immune system may take upwards of 3 months. So in that period of time where we're not fully constituted in terms of our immune system being where it should, it's possible we may still be exposed to the virus and may theoretically be carrying around a strain of that virus that won't necessarily make us sick, but could certainly be spread to other people. So again, this really highlights the importance of making sure we understand that getting that shot in the arm doesn't close the book on the importance of maintaining our masking, our distancing, and all those other health measures for some time to make sure we don't open the door, even the slightest bit, for the virus to be spread from one person to another.
I'm so glad that he asked that question. I think that's something a lot of people really have been thinking about. And it occurs to me that even when we get beyond where we have to be masking and maintaining that social distance, that I think there are a heightened awareness of the infectious nature, maybe, of our society to begin with. And I think people are going to bring some really improved habits in that area forward with them, even after we get kind of beyond the critical point with this virus that I think people have been so concerned about. So let's get our next caller is Kathy. She's from Massachusetts. Kathy, it's great to have you with us. What is your question today?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm calling to. Do you know how long the immunity will last once you get the vaccine? And if so, will we, like in a year, need a booster or something to immunize us? Or do you know anything about that?
That's an excellent question. These are fantastic, and a question that I've actually fielded many times. The answer is we don't know for sure, and I know that may seem unsatisfying, but let's put it into context. We have studies that show that people who have survived the infection and have developed natural immunity have demonstrated antibodies as late as 7 months after the initial exposure to the infection. So we suspect that we may be able to at least replicate that if we have a robust immune response to one of our vaccines. We don't know if that immune response will persist that much longer beyond that 7-month range. It's possible. What we'll probably have to know is the results from antibody testing, for example, that can be done on a wider scale, probably in about a year's time, to know just how many of us as vaccine recipients are truly immune by an antibody level measurement, and how much is still circulating within our communities. And when we put those two variables together, we'll be in a better place to determine, is this something that's maybe going to be one and done? Or is it something that we might need once a year, for example, like the annual flu vaccine? And I think it's just too early to say right now.
Okay, we have another question coming in from Twitter for you, Doctor, from one of our audience members. He wants to know, my question is, if you get the vaccine, could you still be a spreader?
Yeah, so again, I think that's similar to the question that was asked before in terms of being a carrier. And I will reiterate that getting the shot in the arm does not render you immune and impossible for having the virus still infect you. And for that period of time within which your immune system is still building up the adequate response, it's absolutely possible that you may still potentially get infected and spread it to other people. So please don't take any chances. Be patient. Remember to keep up with the masking, the distancing, the limiting contacts. Don't party yet. We can party once the pandemic is over, or at least under much better control. They're doing it in Australia and New Zealand, and they did it without a vaccine. So just imagine if we worked half as hard and we've got the vaccine on our side as well. The future looks bright.
So, Doctor, I have a question for you. I was reading yesterday about this survey that came out from Kaiser Health Foundation. It said that 1 in 4 Americans are suggesting that they don't want to get vaccinated. It showed that Republicans, rural Americans, and African Americans are among those who are the most skeptical about it. But a quarter of the people surveyed expressing skepticism and suggesting that they don't want to get vaccinated. I guess I have a couple of questions, behind that. Why do you think that is? What can you say to encourage people about the safety and maybe even necessity of the vaccine? And what happens if a whole quarter of the population decide not to participate?
Yeah, those are really important points to address. And to the first point, I think it's understandable. Look, this is an unprecedented situation historically for anybody who's less than 102 years old and wasn't there for the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918. We've never seen anything like this. And in the medical field, we don't normally go from scratch to vaccines being deployed and in people's arms in a year. So it's understandable that people would have a lot of skepticism and doubt about the safety and true effectiveness of these vaccines. But let me try and reassure you, what we do have on our side is a tremendous amount of collaboration that has happened within the medical and research community to make this the top priority. It's not just for profit, it's because this is something that's going to help save lives. And there have been no shortcuts taken. Normally, it takes years to enroll people in trials and get to a phase 3 level of 30, 40, 50,000. But because of the urgency of this need, we managed to do that in a matter of months. It doesn't make the results any less valid. We just managed to get there sooner. In addition to that, the regulatory bodies made this a priority. The MHRA in the UK, the FDA in the US, Health Canada here in Canada, all designated this as top priority, and appropriately so. So they didn't dawdle. They made sure that they had all the requisite data. They looked at it very carefully. They made sure that if there were safety signals, they were explained. We saw that trials were stopped by Johnson & Johnson and were stopped by AstraZeneca, where there was an illness that might have been related to the vaccine, and time was taken to clearly address those cases before the trials were resumed. So as much as this was expedited, there was no shortcut taken in terms of how the process was evaluated. It was done according to book, 100%. And truthfully, it's amazing because these results of 90, 95% effectiveness are just incredible. They're not the kind of numbers we typically see to manage a difficult respiratory syndrome of any kind, whether you're talking influenza or pneumococcal pneumonia, which are big killers in our community every year. These are really amazing results. It's a testament to the research community, and I think we should all be proud. I think we should feel confident that no shortcuts were taken, and we can feel pretty reassured that these vaccines are not only effective and safe, but if you have concerns, ask questions. There's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of misinformation too, so get your answers from credible sources, and there's no such thing as a wrong question or a bad question. It's important to engage everyone and make sure that their concerns are heard.
Yeah, and trying to confront misinformation is kind of a big theme in this show. So I'm so happy that you're here to answer these questions, able to make that point. We have another question for you from our audience. I think we have a tweet now, a tweet from Patty who wants to know, should people who have already had COVID-19 still take the vaccine? And let's expand that to make sure that includes not just those who have been sick, but anyone who's tested positive. We know a lot of people have tested positive and not really become critically ill. Should those folks be getting a vaccine as well?
Yeah, a really important question. Again, I could say that about all of these, but these are really just such high yield and important questions to answer. And the simple answer to that is probably not. The reason being is that if you have survived COVID-19, chances are that you will have immunity to the virus. And unless you're in a very high risk situation and you're quite immune compromised or very immune suppressed, the likelihood of those antibodies waning and going away and not providing you enough protection should you be re-exposed is very low. Now, that being said, there is a possibility. We've heard of these cases that are well documented that people have become reinfected. It's not impossible, but it is exceedingly rare. So what I would say is, if you've had COVID-19, check with your doctor. If you are in the category of someone who's quite elderly, for example, your immune system is not very healthy to begin with. It's not actually inconceivable that you may be a reasonable candidate for the vaccine nonetheless. The problem will be, of course, the prioritization, because those people who may have not have had COVID before also having the same level of risk are probably going to require the vaccine before you do.
And we have one more question for you from our audience before we lose you today from someone who calls himself Disgusted Hypocrisies and Lies. Does the vaccine contain a live virus like the flu vaccine? I'm told that folks that are on biologic meds can't take a vaccine, if so. So I
I'm
guess
so
address
glad
both of
that,
those.
yeah, I'm really glad that that question was asked, because there are a few myths even within the question itself. So the first thing is that a lot of the flu vaccines are not live. So we don't try and use live vaccines more often than we have to, because even though a live virus may cause a more robust immune response, there's a possibility that that may be unchecked and that people may actually react adversely, especially people with autoimmune conditions, for example. The front runner vaccines right now, the mRNA vaccines and the vector-based vaccines, are not live virus. They are all based on killed virus. So there's very little actual viral material at all in these formulations. So we don't have to worry very much about those adverse reactions. And it actually makes the technology such that these vaccines can be manufactured more efficiently and in larger doses, so the supply issue becomes less of a problem. So don't worry too much about live virus. These killed vaccines are going to keep more people alive, hopefully, over the next year.
Dr. Sharkawy, I can't thank you enough. That's terrific. Every one of your answers. I'm so grateful, not just that you're here to share your knowledge and your experience, but you've done it in a way that's so accessible for all of us. So I'm really grateful for that. This has been terrific. As this unfolds and we go into the new year, we're going to come back and ask you to join us again, because I know that the questions are going to continue to grow, and you've just been so great about it. Thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you have a terrific rest of the week.
Thank you. My pleasure, and stay safe.
Thank you. You too, doctor. Thank you so much. Dr. Sharkawy from, I think, the University of Toronto. He was fantastic. He was fantastic. We have got to have him back again. I know that there's a backlog of questions and concerns about the coronavirus and the vaccine and how this is all going to unfold in the months ahead. So we're going to continue to talk about these issues that we know are important to you as we go forward. Also, and a big thank you to Michael Steele, as always, for being here to talk about the Republican Party and what the future looks like for that party. And of course, as always, an enormous thank you to all of you. You are what we are all about. We're so happy that we have this opportunity to answer your questions, and we're so grateful for your commitment and your dedication to everything that we've been fighting for here at the Lincoln Project. And trying to confront misinformation, make sure that you're informed, that you have what you need, that we are holding these elected folks in Washington accountable, that we are defending democracy. It's so much that has become a part of our efforts here. And we're grateful for everything that you do for that as well. You know, I was particularly struck by the conversation that I had with Michael Steele today about the Republican Party, about the future of the party, and just the idea, the realization, and I don't want to say realization even because it sounds like I've been ignorant to it all this time. That's not the case. But the really hard realization just in these last couple of weeks post-election, that has hit me, this idea that we could move beyond the Trump era, that maybe there was a hunger out there amongst Republican leaders to go back and defend those principles upon which our party was founded, to become a voice for values again, a voice for, freedom, for liberty, constitutionalism, for democracy, something as basic in the United States. You would think that we would all want to be a voice for democracy. And to see so many elected Republican leaders who would have the opportunity now to move beyond the damage of Donald Trump, beyond the Trump era, openly and gleefully embrace it in these last few weeks, has been highly educational for me. It has really been made an extraordinary impact on me. And I think that that's something that we need to discuss here on this show in much greater detail. And I'm sure that we will do that when we come back and visit with all of you again on Thursday. We will be back, as always, on Thursday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll continue that conversation then. Again, thank you for being with us. I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for joining us on Vote for America on LPTV.
The end is coming. The end of the noise and lies. The end of the chaos and division. The end of the hate. In its place, a new America is ready to stand tall again, ready to restore the goodness in the heart of our nation, ready to put people before politics, ready to lead, to innovate, to grow, to heal. It won't always be easy. There are tough times to come. COVID to be defeated, an economy to restore. But that new day is coming. A day when words like caring, competent, and professional won't be insults. A day when compassion and character mean more than celebrity. A day when every American's rights are respected and valued. That day is coming because of your hard work, your commitment, your energy and passion. That day is coming because of your vote. Joe Biden, our president. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.